Thanks for coming this morning. I appreciate it. Like, obviously, we've known each other for a while, but I wanted to tell more people about all the amazing stuff you're working on. So, tell us a bit more about your background and where you come from.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. A background where I come from. Grew up in Houston, Kingwood, a little suburb in the Northeast. Went to school at UT, studied government and communications, but quickly realized I did not want to work in government. So somehow found my way into startups, and really in kind of the post-investment support platform type function. So spent a few years at Capital Factory, a local accelerator here in Austin, and now I'm leading all the post-investment support efforts at Foundation Capital, which is a big seed stage VC fund out, primarily based in the Bay Area, but I am here full-time in Austin.
Nice. So, you how long were you at Capital Factory for before you?
About 3 years,
Yeah.
a little bit over, yeah.
What did you learn, seeing all that kind of velocity of entrepreneurs coming through the door?
Honestly, I learned so much, kind of everything that I know today stems from that experience. I think the first thing I learned was just what the venture capital business model is and what an investor looks for in a startup founder when they're investing millions of dollars into a company that has zero or very minimal revenue. I learned how to work within an it was my first job out of college, so how to work professionally, how to send good emails, say hi instead of hey, just basic stuff like that. And then I learned also how to kind of align different teams on goals and a vision and more institutional stuff. And I also learned that I like building processes and systems and kind of the high level process of why something runs a certain way. I really enjoy figuring those problems out.
So you fell into that kind of entrepreneurial world rather than government. I think you made a great decision there.
Yeah,
First of
for
all,
sure.
I couldn't work in government.
Yeah, no.
But then
You just don't get anything done.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. So you weren't put off by the entrepreneurial world because it's hard and it's gritty.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, I have it easy. I sit on the investing side, right?
Yeah.
I'm not waking up every day trying to bring my vision to a reality. But I get to help people that are working on that. And that's super inspiring because it's something that I would love to do someday, but I haven't had that idea or frankly, that courage to just take the leap and kind of go for it.
And Foundation Capital is probably going to keep building on that education for you and what you want to do, what you have conviction about.
Yeah, for sure. I think Foundation really taught me. Capital Factory is great, but it's very much they do follow-on capital. They're not leading rounds. They're doing 50, 100K checks. It's not they're not fighting to win deals with the best entrepreneurs, putting millions of dollars to work in a company when it's really early stage. So just kind of the expectations that come along with that type of investment strategy and that type of capital. That's what Foundations really opened my eyes to. And also just how to be super rigorous in terms of diligencing whether or not this is an opportunity worth taking another look at or really diving into, or whether honestly how to say no even when things are super compelling, because there's tons of super compelling things, but it's to something can be super compelling, but if it's compelling enough that someone can build a $10 billion $500 million a year revenue type company is it's just a different watermark, and it's really difficult to build a conviction around that level of success.
That's the word I heard over and over when I'm raising capital is conviction.
Conviction.
The investor has to feel conviction, and that's different for different investors, and it's hard to quantify what that really means. So what's Foundation Capital's main focus on? Their pre-seed or their seed?
Pre-seed and seed stage. I mean, it's less about what the title of the round is and more about the ownership that we as a firm are getting with our investment strategy. So we're typically the first external investor into a company, the first institution. They might have raised some money from friends and family, from angel investors, but we'll come in and lead their first institutional round. We try to get close to 20% ownership on that initial investment. We sit on the board, work really closely with the founders, and sector-wise, we mostly focus on fintech, enterprise software, and crypto. In fintech, it's super broad, but touching payments in some form. In enterprise software, it's AI and automation. And it's been that way for over a decade. Lots of firms are now AI firms because of large language models and GPT and generative AI and stuff. And We've definitely invested in a lot of those companies as well, but
Yeah.
really we've been doing the AI investing thesis for over a decade now. And then crypto.
I was going to ask about that. Is it wound down a bit, or?
I mean, it's slowed down for sure, but really, like, it's flushed out a lot of the like what we would call like the tourists, the people that are just there trying to kind of like make a quick buck, or
Yeah.
and what we look for there is like blockchain as a technology, as an infrastructure. That's really exciting, and there's lots of actual real world use cases there. So
Yeah.
our angle on crypto investing is like, where does blockchain as a technology intersect either on like the fintech end with things like decentralized finance, or what we call like hybrid finance, which is just using blockchain as the back end ledger infrastructure for a traditional finance or fintech product.
Yeah.
Or then on the enterprise end, there's lots of interesting stuff around like blockchain native data infrastructure and hosting models as nodes on a blockchain, and using tokenization to kind of incentivize training models or calling models. So those are the types of things that we look at.
That's awesome, and I love that thing you said about the tourists, and that's
Yeah.
what I was going to ask you a bit about. Is like with the venture market changing and shifting, from my perception, you might tell me it's different, over like since COVID and things like that. Like, are we seeing less tourists who just raise money real quick and real fast, and we're seeing more like seasoned entrepreneurs or people who genuinely care about entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think what happened in COVID, particularly like the 18 months after COVID, is like there's so much money in the system. People need to, like, when you think about money, there's like at the entrepreneur level, the business level, then there's at like the VC level, like the investor level, but then like we have investors too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all these people had money that they needed to put somewhere. And so for like at the very top level, these like pension funds, these family offices, like everyone is seeing the success of venture, right? And having more money that they need to park somewhere. And there's not enough great venture funds to put those into. So people will raise new venture funds. So it created like the overflow up here, created like an overflow here at the investor level. Then the investors are like, all right, well, we got to deploy a lot of this capital. And so then that trickled down to like the founder entrepreneur level and made it much easier to raise capital. And then at the same time, the valuations went crazy because there's so much capital, like we just need to deploy it. And founders now have more options, and they're like, well, I don't want to take your capital. I'll take this one because it's less expensive, right? And so then they raise money at really high valuations, and it's great while it lasts, but it's kind of like a fun party, right? Like you have a great time, you get a little drunk, you enjoy the party, right?
Yeah.
And then the next morning comes the hangover, and like the hangover is kind of where we're at now. And I think we're towards the tail end of the hangover, but for like this whole year has really been kind of a slowdown. And if you raise money at a really high valuation, well, now you can't justify that valuation. So you got to raise more money at the same or lower valuation, which your previous investors don't like because it marks down their numbers. Your employees don't like because they got stock options that are now underwater, not nearly as valuable as they thought they'd be. And you as a company or owner don't like it because now you're diluting yourself a lot more just to like keep the company alive.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely flushed out a lot of people that were kind of raising money because it was like the trendy thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, you're an entrepreneur. Like, this isn't fun. Like,
No,
this isn't like something
I
that...
think it's like a public service to like put people off a little bit because
Yeah.
it's not for everybody, and it's like rugby. It
Yeah.
hurts. It's
No,
fun,
it
but
hurts.
It hurts.
Like, I don't know that there was a ton of people going in saying like, oh, well, now it's like super easy to raise money, so like I'm just going to go do it. I think what it did do, though, is if you were raising money but didn't necessarily have the best metrics, or like you weren't ready to raise money, it made it possible to raise money. And I mean, as an entrepreneur, money's like oxygen. So you're going to rate, like if you have the opportunity to raise it, most people would give you the advice to just go raise it. Like I would too, because
Yeah.
if it's like, get it while it's good. And
Yeah, you can't knock them for raising the money.
No.
But I think it was when I started raising money rather than just bootstrapping. It was different to me because I felt like we're trying to build something that has value, but there was like I felt there was a little bit of a culture of growth at all costs, and I think now that's starting to recalibrate growth at all costs.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's more important to like stay alive and grow in general. And the methods of growth at all costs were like funneling shitloads of money into like incentives for users or into customer acquisition on like digital media channels, and like all that's gotten a lot harder. So it's not just that like valuations and the fundraising environment has gotten tighter and more down to earth, but like it is harder to like, it's not as easy to take $100, put that into Facebook ads and get $110 back, or even $50 back, which is what a lot of people were doing.
Yeah.
Now you're lucky if you put $100 in, you get like 10 to $20 back.
Yeah.
And so like the calculation changes a lot, and especially when it's harder to raise more money, now you've got to be more conservative with the money that you do have, and just be a lot more thoughtful about how you try to scale and use the money to grow.
Yeah, I think, I've been involved in PPC and SEO for years, and the pay-to-play thing is real now as well. Like it's really hard to use paid advertisement as a startup, I think, to see success. You need to think of more growth hacking ways.
Yeah. Well, and I've been seeing too, like there's lots of interesting companies that are trying to figure out like zero-party data. So there's all this types of data that companies collect, right? And first-party data is like data that you give a company by using their product, right? Like I interact with certain posts on Facebook. Facebook has first-party data on what I like, and they can use that to serve me ads and sell my data to other people, right? Then there's third-party data, which is like, hey, we know that Jake on other sites have done all these things, right? And they can sell that and again, use it to personalize. Then zero-party data is this idea that like I'm voluntarily giving up my data to some company because it's going to give me some sort of value. I'm going to get more relevant ads. I'm going to get like offers and things that are more exciting or relevant to me. And I think that's like an interesting trend that I've just noticed is like, because it's a lot harder to get these third-party data now that like Apple is cracking down on tracking across apps, and even first-party data, it's got to be like super secure, super anonymized, super private. They need ways to reduce that customer acquisition cost, and like companies need ways to target a lot better. And so zero-party data is, I think, an interesting tool that's going to help companies do that.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that probably 3 or 4 years ago. People starting to talk about what that might look like. I do a lot of like think tanks, or I mentor people, or just like talking about ideas like this to people. And so these sort of things come up. And this guy was a developer for, I think he was Virgin Orbit at the time, but then he was going to SpaceX, and he was talking about how you'd create this like identity kind of passport, and where your data is, and who owns it, or who's got it, or who's using it, and how are you profiting from it, or how can you just take it back. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
The other subject I want to make sure we touch on before we close up is your interest in AI, your personal interest, not just the firms you work with.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you're looking at, what you're interested in. I know you've built a few little things for fun.
Yeah. AI is super cool, man. Like it's existed forever, right? But now we can interact with it in our daily lives, and it's as good as us at certain tasks and better than us at other tasks. And I think what's exciting about it is that it just creates an entirely new way for people to be creative, right? Like me, I'm not artistic, I'm not aesthetically inclined, whatever, but I can describe something and now I can generate an image that looks like that, right? Or I can, like there's tools out now where I can describe an app and it will generate me a front end, like a UI, right? I know very basic Python. I took one class back in college. I can code things now, and I can like create software programs using AI. It's basically like this huge leveling of the playing field of like for people that enjoy building things, being entrepreneurial, like it's just this huge unlock because I mean, now you don't need someone who is a super experienced engineer to build your MVP. You can do that yourself. And so I'm excited about it because I think it's going to increase the number of entrepreneurs in the world and the number of people building cool things in the world. And I now can take like these crazy ideas that I'll have and like actually bring them to life in a way that like without any sort of AI, I just wouldn't be able to do. So I just think it's like fundamentally going to change the way that we all work and interact with the world. And like, it's super exciting.
Yeah, it literally is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think it's going to make it more and more. I remember I had GPT logins quite a while ago, a couple of years ago, probably 2, 3, 4 years ago. And it was quite hard to sign up because it was kind of under the radar a little bit. And it's come on so far. And I think we're going to see a lot of development within the UI, meaning how we see it embedded into Photoshop or how we see it embedded into Figma or whatever.
Well, I have kind of a hot take around that in general. Yeah. So, I mean, to just set the framework or the way that I'm thinking about this, what is Windows, right? It's an operating system. What does that mean? It means that it is a easy to understand way for you to interact with your computer and for it to translate that into a way that the machine understands, right?
Yeah.
If I click Internet Explorer, I open up the internet, right?
Yeah.
If I type something in and hit enter, I want to navigate to that place, right? It's basically a way for us to communicate with a computer.
Yeah.
And when you think about computer code, like what is that? That's just the same thing. It's just more structured, right? Python is a way for us to communicate to a computer what processes we want it to do with whatever data it's getting fed into, right? And if you think about what's a large language model, well, that's just giving the computer the ability to understand what we want in natural language versus clicks, like a UI language, or versus coding, which is just computer language, right? So what that means is, like, why do we need UIs anymore? If we can just describe what we want to a computer and it knows what we want and it can give it to us, like, what's the point of having these buttons, these filters, like all the things that we've gotten accustomed to with how we navigate and interact with computers? I think it's all going to be replaced by just natural language, because natural language is quicker. You can add more context.
Yeah.
And like a second order effect of that is, what's the easiest way to communicate with natural language? Like, what is it?
What, I don't know.
Voice. Right? This.
Oh, so you mean that?
Yeah, like what's the easiest medium?
Yeah, that's
why.
yeah,
I mean,
rather
the
than
easiest
keyboard,
medium
you
is thoughts,
mean.
right? And like
Yeah.
Elon's
Well,
working
Elon's
on
on
that.
that,
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, who knows how long out that is? And in the intermediary time, like, it's so much easier to describe what you want than to type it out. And you can give more context. And when you think about the way a language model works, it's not like Google where it's like keyword based.
Yeah.
Right? It's very much context based. So it gives you better output the more details you give it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be this whole new wave of applications and like software that has minimal UI. It's mostly just like a search bar or like a voice record button.
Yeah.
And you're basically just talking to the computer and telling it what you want. Like, imagine what's a big software tool everyone uses, like Tableau, like data visualization, right? Tableau is just a bunch of buttons and filters that lets you create a certain visualization.
Yes.
But if you could just say, hey, create me a visualization, show me all the repeat customers over the last 3 months and group them by cohort. Like, all right, computer understands what that means. Why do we need buttons? Like, we don't need to train people on how to use software anymore. You can just talk to it.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
And like I've been, like I was, and I still am dyslexic. And so when I was a kid, they would put me on computers from a very, very young age. And like when computers weren't even that good, and there was this tool called Dragon Naturally Speaking, so you could speak into it and it would dictate. That's just
cool.
like nothing now. But then it was pretty crazy. It wasn't very good. But it still was not very good. But obviously that will get better. But I feel like there's always, I feel like there's the discovery that needs to come into the UI. Like if you go on Airbnb, there's something just visually nice to look at what potentially I could get inspiration. So it's figuring out how we can. That voice thing is going to be all about. We're going to have a Jarvis. We're going to have an Iron Man.
That's a really good point, because I mean you can only ask the computer to do what you know it is capable of.
You only know what you know.
Like if there's features that it has that you don't know about, and there's no UI to like show you, hey, you can do these things, then you're going to be kind of pigeonholed. So I mean, that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how we solve that, because it's definitely going to go through voice, but then like how does it serve up the options to give us creative thoughts about how we're going to do, because we need to collaborate with AI to come up with real creative solutions. AI is not there to be creative. It's a different type of.
No, it is creative though. It's like, oh, hey, I want to group them by this, and like an AI would be able to come and say, oh, what if you grouped it by this instead? That would be a really interesting slice of the data.
Yeah, I always think about as well, like because I build software, is like I wonder how we solve the thing with tagging data and stuff, because most people's data and their data lakes aren't very well organized. There's only like the top elite companies that are really taking data seriously. So yeah, you'd love to just say Tableau, hey, show me this metric as if it was this, and then it can only do what it knows the thing is.
Yeah,
it's
crap in, crap out. Yeah.
So it's figuring. There's probably room for startups there as well.
Oh yeah, there's tons of startups that do that. There's one called Anomalo that's like data quality monitoring. So it will automatically learn the schema of your data, and then if you start getting data that's like off, it will basically be like, hey, this data's off. This is why.
You're right.
Like, here's a potential way that you can fix it.
Yeah.
That I think is definitely an interesting problem to solve, because I actually think people now value data a lot more, because now you can use data to train models and do interesting things with it.
Yes.
Like data's the new oil. That's been a thing for like a decade now, but it's more important than ever now that it's such a necessary input for any AI model.
Yeah. The saying used to be like, you're not a XYZ company, you're a software company, because usually software was the thing that needed to be be the IP and the thing in your business. But now it's like you're not a software company, you're a data company.
Well,
how do you do
I
that?
just think like all software companies are now data and AI companies,
Yes.
right? It's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if you were to say, the NBA is like a media brand, not a basketball brand. It's like, well, just all basketball brands are media brands.
Yeah.
Like the big three, all these other leagues, whatever.
Yeah.
They
People say
make
that
money
about
off media.
drinks companies.
It's just the way that it's done.
Yeah, drinks companies aren't drinks companies, alcohol companies. They're marketing companies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Red Bull is not a drink company; it's a marketing company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's going to have to be I think the gap that holds things back is the data literacy of people and the companies and how they see their data and how they organize it.
Yeah.
But
Well, there's like the only way you can differentiate it all now is because everyone's got access to these models that are pre-trained, that are really good. There's open source options now. Those are only going to get better too. So the question becomes, how do you build something that's unique, right? There's dozens of these startups out there that will research prospects for you or will write your sales sequence for you. So like, what is unique about that? How do you win that market? Like the two ways you can do it is one, data. You need some sort of first party data, meaning like it's data that you're getting from the interaction with the platform or the product that then can feed your algorithm and make it better over time. But that's also unique and other people don't have access to.
Yes,
So it
100%.
differentiates you. And then workflows, like understanding how that fits into the business problem that you're solving, right? Like the prime example of this is Jasper, like the company here in town, generative AI marketing, right? Any company can use ChatGPT to generate marketing content, right? But Jasper's advantage is they work with 10 of the top 25 brands in the world, right?
Yes.
And they know what outputs those brands are using and actually like deploying into the real world, so they can fine tune their models. And then at the same time, they're not just generating the content, they're building in all the workflows that let you post it immediately to Twitter, put it in Sprout Social or all these other platforms that people are building. And that creates something that's competitive and hard to keep up with, right? If you're an AI marketing company now, not only do you have to somehow find a way to create better output than Jasper, where they have a huge data advantage, but you've got to build all these integrations and feature sets in where they just have a huge head start. So I think there's going to be like this bifurcation where there's going to be the companies that were early and can get scale really quickly and can compound those data and workflow advantages. And then there's going to be all these small point solutions that are pretty capital efficient, don't take a lot of money to run, but it's really hard for them to grow or expand and get super huge because there's all these incumbents that just have these structural advantages that they can never compete with. So I think there's going to be a lot of these smaller companies that maybe don't necessarily make sense for like VC investment, but are still good businesses that can make good cash flow, like make profitable companies. And then there's like these behemoths that are going to come out that are just able to like double down with those structural advantages that they can create.
Yeah, I heard a saying or whatever, which is like, people who invented electricity and got it to houses made a lot of money, but the people who made products that used electricity were the real things that drove
really
the economy. There's another point I was going to say on that as well. That was what I was going to say. So I've got a friend of mine that I've been talking to a lot recently, and he's got something like what you just said in medicine. So and he's just got it peer reviewed that it gets better results than the Google output and the AI and stuff.
Wow,
so I've got it on my phone. It's he actually runs it through WhatsApp as a delivery method.
That's cool.
It's pretty cool. But you can say, okay, tell me. He's made it for doctors who are like, what is the evidence show with and you give it a command, and then it gives you all this peer review information and stuff. So it has that like learning model separate to whatever AI he's using to run the process. It's the way.
That's super cool. Yeah. I think like synthesizing information and like making it easier to find stuff like search, like all that is going to be very different because of language models.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, man. Well, thanks for your time today, man. I appreciate
thanks
you.
for having me. It was fun.
fun.
I just feel like I just spewed some hot takes, but
I love the hot take, and I feel like we could have just kept on going.
Yeah,
as
we
well.
totally could have.
Like, definitely had some drinks, but we'll do that next time.
All right, next time. Let's do it again.
Cool, man.
Sweet.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Cheers.